And I think we can, let's go ahead and mute the join noise. I will do that. And just keep an eye out for folks that need to be let in still. And we're live. All right. Welcome everyone to slc.net. We're here today to provide cool .NET related content for all of y'all, and we're just gonna hit this thing, see what we've got going on. We're really excited though. We have a great guest speaker tonight, and I think you're gonna enjoy it a lot. So let's just hit through the agenda here really quick. So we're gonna hit a few things. First off, I'm gonna talk. I already did that, so now we'll move on to the next part where I don't talk. Just kidding. I'm always gonna talk. Today is my day to talk. So we're going to do a little bit of time for lightning talks. If anyone has a lightning talk that they would like to give, a lightning talk, for those of you who don't know, is 0 to 5 minutes worth of speaking about some topic that you think might be interesting to this group. It does not have to follow any particular format. We can potentially let you present if you would like to present. But remember, it's only 5 minutes, maximum of 5 minutes. We set a timer and we cut you off if you go over 5 minutes. So that could include some time also for Q&A if you want to open up and let folks ask you questions, but you don't have to, but we like it when you do. All right, so we'll do that, and then we're gonna go through and we will have a presentation on adding real-time features to your application with SignalR by Javier Lozano. We're really lucky to have him with us today. And then following that, we have a couple of other things, just some final housekeeping items. And then we're going to start a new book club. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Phoenix project at the end of the evening tonight, for those who want to stick around for that. Or we'll catch you next time. All right, moving on. A couple of items. As mentioned, this presentation is streamed simultaneously to our YouTube channel. You can get to that with this link here, or you can search for, let's see, how's it? I think it's SLC Net User Group, I believe is the URL and the username in YouTube, but it's pretty easy to find. And then also, we encourage folks to use the chat feature in Zoom and or in YouTube during the presentation, of course, unless the presenter wants you to speak up during the presentation, totally up to them. But if you wouldn't mind, if you want to add any comments that you'd like, or any thoughts or any questions, and we will make sure that those get seen. We'll have someone watching the YouTube channel. So for those of you who are viewing there, you can do that. And then last note about the YouTube channel, these videos are also recorded. And so they go live after the event in addition. So you can always go back and reference if you would like to, or you can share it with your friends if you enjoyed the presentation. Yeah. And, if you like it, if you like doing that kind of thing, you can always subscribe. That's a thing that we like for our YouTube channel. So great. Okay, I think with that said, we are ready to move on to lightning talks. Do we have any brave individuals among us today? And you don't really have to be that brave, because again, it's only 5 minutes. It's not that bad. Anyone who's interested or has something that they've learned recently, either about .NET or about anything that they think might be interesting to this group. I mean, I think, if you go off on the latest Marvel movie, then that probably is interesting to most of this group, and I think that might even qualify, right? But anything that really interests you that you think would be interesting to this group, that is the definition of a lightning talk. And it doesn't have to be 5 minutes, but it can't be longer than 5 minutes. So if you're interested, you can unmute yourself and let us know. We have time for 1 or 2 of these, or none, if no one speaks up. But I'll make it really awkward, because that's what I do. I'm just going to make it super awkward until someone does decide to give a lightning talk, or until at least some of this time goes by. Or you'll make me, like, you know, go off on a rant about Marvel or something like that. You don't want that. No one wants that. Any takers? It's a quiet group today. I once gave a lightning talk about role-playing games. Not at this meetup, but at a different meetup.
All right, I'll give a lightning talk since no one else is kind of volunteering here.
Awesome. Thank you, Lane.
You're welcome. So I have been attending the software craftsmanship group lately. And hello, Steve. No Steve from over there. And I just ran across a book that's kind of related to some of the topics that we cover there, called about coding dojos. And I'm really it's the first time I've kind of heard of this practice, and I just learned about Codenkatas with the software craftsman group, and I find the practice really interesting, like setting aside time to practice skills kind of in a little sandbox that we can, especially like test-driven development and stuff along those lines, to do it against like toy little exercises, but in order to kind of learn the skills that we should be using if we're doing test-driven development on our production code. And just the last couple of weeks, I started doing some of these with my group at work. I'm the lead programmer for a small team, and it has been just kind of enlightening, just kind of and even though I'm leading these groups, I feel like I'm learning some things from it too. So yeah, it's been kind of an interesting experience, and hopefully we get to a point where our team is actually doing test-driven development on our production code base.
Very cool.
That's my lightning talk.
Thanks, Lane. Hey, what was the name of the book?
Let me pull it up here real quick. I can't remember. It's the Coding Dojo Handbook by Emily Bach.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to check that out. I've written a little bit about Codenkatas and dojos and stuff in the past, so that's a topic I really like. Cool.
Yeah, and I've done coding exercises on sites like HackerRank and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But like the last couple of months is the first time I've heard this concept of coding kata that has been really interesting and fun to do with the software craftsmanship group.
Cool. And you said you were leading some folks at work and doing a few katas as well. How much time do you spend doing stuff like that?
We've done 2 sessions so far. My plan is to do it once a week for an hour.
That's fantastic. Very cool.
We're doing, I just started a company called TaxBlock up here in Layton. I've been with them for about a little more than 2 months.
Nice. All right. Does anyone else have questions for Lane about the coding dojos or Codenkatas or the book?
There's a term that I cannot remember that is similar, but that targets the, I don't want to say beginner learner. It's basically a set of exercises that are typically like predefined but that take you through the language. Like I said, I wish I could
Cones.
had the term cones.
Yeah.
Cones.
Yes.
Yes. Like Ruby cones.
How do you
Yep,
spell
that is
it?
it. Now that you
How
mentioned
do
it,
you spell
it's
it?
like KOANS.
Is it K or C? I can't remember, but yeah.
I'm pretty sure
it
it's
is like that.
K.
So are these designed to learn like syntax?
Well, it could be anything. It could be algorithms and whatnot, but it's usually it's like a pre-laid out set of content that gives you exercises, or you could call them, I don't want to call them katas because you're not repeating the same thing each time. But I've seen them done in a TDD fashion, right? Where you start with a test, and the first thing is just to uncomment the test to make it pass, right? And then thinking more about TDD, it's okay, now you have a test. This is how you call a function. Call the function with this parameter, and they have it set up so that it will test that you input that right parameter. And I gave some of these cones a while ago to some friends, and unfortunately they weren't quite as well done as I would like, but I really liked the concept as it related to a learning methodology. So sorry, not really a question, but I thought it was related and
Yeah,
potentially beneficial.
Interesting. I had not heard of that concept before either. So yeah, I will look some of those up.
All right, and that is time. So thanks, Lane. I don't know how to do the reaction. Somebody did a clapping reaction, but I think we should all do that if you have one handy and you know how to do it. Or that. You can do that. Yeah.
Video.
Yeah, man. That was fantastic. Thank you. All right, we have time for one other lightning talk if anyone would like to give one. As you can see, it's not that hard. It's not that scary. Ask Lane, he'll tell you. Yeah, we're all friends here. A book is a great place to start. I really like that. Actually, I've done lightning talks on books are good. But also maybe, you know, if you went to another virtual event or something that you enjoyed, you could talk about that. Like experience reports make good lightning talks. Yeah, all kinds of things. I'm here for you, making it awkward. That's what I do.
I just purchased a book and gave a talk on concurrency and multi-threading at my work, and found a lot of enlightenment with async await and how it works. And some of the textbooks that I took as truth turned out to be garbage, which kind of disappointed me going through trying to do a simple design, and it turns out most of the people don't do sufficient small tasks to really show a particular feature. They kind of overlook the complexity of things, or what could be a complexity of things, and take that out and show the simple pieces that you could just easily put together. Most of the async awaits come from the Microsoft site of that presentation, and they basically take it word for word and say, this is the example. But very few people say, let's make something new and show if I could simplify it and kind of integrate it to what I do at work or what you see in the code at work, and make it so people could understand. I like to do that. And I just picked up a book by Stephen Cleary talking about concurrency in C# cookbook. And I'm going to go through that and get even a better understanding than what I thought I did have, even after many years working with the same technology. Things seem to be new every time I address this and try to solve problems. that are so intertwined with each other that it becomes so complex that you lose your direction very easily. So that's all I want to say.
That's great. Thanks, Tony. Does anyone have any questions for Tony?
Yeah, we could talk about multi-threading and parallel computing. So
Yeah, no, that's really cool though. I think that's my experience with technology is generally that, you know, every couple years, everything I knew before was wrong, or, you know, a lot of it anyway. Right. It's not always true. There are a lot of things that are very applicable across long periods of time. Right. But there are plenty of areas that change pretty quickly. And I think it's a good reminder, right? Just to be willing to look and to learn, right? That's part of what we have to do.
yeah, I've been programming for over 30 years. So I've seen a lot of technology come and go, and I spent a lot of time understanding some of these really gotcha technology like COM and all these earlier technologies that you spend so much time and they become non-existent. So what is worth spending your time with?
Definitely.
And async await is big now. You have it in so many different languages. So I did post a link to, and I'm not affiliated with them, right? But asyncexpert.com. Even just looking at the agenda would give you a great study set of topics if you want to learn async and await and learn it well.
Thank you. I'll look in that.
Good question.
Very cool.
Tony, do you happen to know if the book you read is published by O'Reilly?
It is. It's Stephen Cleary concurrency in C# cookbook. And it seems very in depth, and he kind of covers those aspects. It seems like clearly, but I haven't really went through a lot of the book. Just started it really after I gave the talk about my understanding of async await. And this would probably have helped me a little bit more. But
yeah, he's probably a recognized expert. Microsoft actually on some of their blog sites will actually link people to his blog because it's that good.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's time. Hey, everybody give Tony a hand or a wave or, you know, whatever it is that we can do. Yeah, I see some people really know what they're doing. I feel like I'm behind. I don't know what's going
awkward. I felt awkward in the silence, so I had to come forward.
Hey, I appreciate that. That's my job, is to make you feel awkward enough to talk. So thank you.
Because I'll just talk.
It just gets me right here. It's great.
Okay.
Love it. All right. Well, with that, I think we've hit all of our lightning talks. So, and Javier, I think you're back and good. Yeah. Give me a, yeah. Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to just go to our next slide here really quickly. And so, you know, if you want to read it, you can. Hopefully you saw some of this on the meetup event as well. But we're joined by Javier Lozano, who is, he's been doing this for a long time. And, you know, as an MVP with Microsoft and involved in all kinds of things, he's, you know, the guy that kicked off the .NET Conf event and, you know, really drives that. And we're super lucky and super glad to have him. So with no further ado, is it okay if I call you my friend Javier? I'm going to
go for it. We are BFFs.
My friend Javier is, yeah. See, now I feel you guys. All right. Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you, man.
Cool.
I'm going to stop my screen share here.
Let me do my screen share, maybe.
I like it.
Easier said than done. Which desktop am I looking at? Desktop 2. Sweet. Awesome. But again, that's the downside of having multiple screens. I mean, it's great for kind of seeing it all, but it's just kind of a hot mess otherwise. Let me make this as large as I can. So I'm looking up because I have the grid view. above so I can see all of your faces if you're sharing cameras so that I can talk to you. And I have the screen shared here and we can get started. So again, thank you so much, Will, and everybody of the Salt Lake City .NET user group for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really thankful to be able to have this. As I was telling Will earlier that I was sort of triple booked this evening, not with the event, but with family stuff, right? That's the joy of working from home, is just like you pretty much work the entire day because you can check in, check out. And my oldest and my wife right now at a high school soccer game where they're playing right now. Luckily, it is raining here, so baseball got canceled for my younger two. So I don't have to be an Uber driver for them. So that's awesome. That's a very big win for everybody. So yeah, but anyway, thank you so much for taking the time. Actually, before I get started, I had a couple of things here showing, but I wanted to show you this. Actually, I was in your neck of the woods a couple of weeks ago. You should be able to see my desktop. I was at Jordanelle State Park. That's where I took that picture. We were in Park City skiing. Well, my kids were skiing. I was mostly falling. But we had a great time, and it was a beautiful day. Took a picture and I went all iPhone on it, and that's what it looks like. So yeah, I love the area. And like I said, I worked with Will and I worked with Caleb for an entire year. Well, I wouldn't say I worked for them. They put up with me for an entire year. Let me just say it that way. And we had a blast. So when Will said, "Hey, I'm running the user group," perfect. Let's talk. So actually, let me show you. I had slides, but I just figured let's go it off the cuff. Let's have some fun, right? So if you have a question and I'm in the middle of something, just ask it. Trust me. I'm here so we can all learn from each other. It's not just, let me talk and then I will, select you like they do in the press conferences. Nothing like that. Like I said, like Will said, my name is Javier Lozano. That is my email, line number 3. In line 5, that is my Twitter. So I tweet a lot of different things. Well, who am I? I live in Des Moines, Iowa. So if you fly across the country, you fly over me. It's flyover country, and I love it. It's like best kept secret. As Will showed in the slide, I'm the quote unquote CEO. And the reason why I say quote unquote is because it's a company of two, my wife and I. Sometimes I think she's the CEO, but that's just kind of how it goes, I guess. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm now developer tools. I used to be ASP.NET because they change the names all the time. I'm also a board member for the .NET Foundation. I was lucky to get elected to that. So if you are if not a member of the .NET Foundation, I recommend you check it out. It is great. We're there to empower .NET developers and open source projects. So please come join us and fight the good fight. And also, I'm a founder of the Iowa.NET user group since 2003. So I understand all the fun that it gets to do run a user group and all the logistics and everything else that goes with it. So along with that, one quick thing here is that as Will was saying, it's like I also run a virtual conference. It's funny because I make fun of it by calling it the virtual .NET conference. Like when you see the university, the Ohio State University, we are the .NET virtual conference. So .NET Conf, those are the 2 URLs. We recently did a focus event, and a focus event, essentially, we just take one vertical, Windows, microservices, Xamarin, Blazor, and we just spend an entire day, 8 hours, 8+ hours talking about it. And we just got to doing one on Windows. So if you do some Windows development along with that, go check it out, focus.netconf.net. And our bigger conference, which is essentially 3 days long, it's over at www.netconf.net. All right, so slides plus demos. I like to keep everything out on GitHub for people to easily view. So it's right here, GitHub/LozanoTech/Realtime SignalR. The slides I haven't updated for a while. As you can see, I've been doing this for quite a long time, this presentation, and I've been editing as we add things along. The reason why I like to do this presentation, even though the content, I have a lot of .NET 4.5 apps, just to show you that you may have .NET 4.5 apps. You may have quote unquote classic apps, wink, wink, Will, that you may have to have, like you have to running .NET, and that's perfectly fine. But this is how you can add SignalR to it and add that flair, and you can build new things on it. So, but anyway, that's the slide where we're at. Let's start with a quick demo. And where did I bring that up? And are you over here? Perfect. Sweet. I want you all to go to this URL, or actually, let me bring it up over here. I want you to go to HTTPS jarvis.signalr.app. You have a browser. You can also do this on your phone. It is not as cool on the phone, but it works. When you go to that URL, and actually see if I can do it side by side, ta-da, this is what it will look like. Okay. And this is a Siri demo, so it's either going to be cool or it's going to epically fail because Siri. So let's see how it goes. Let's see if Siri is willing to play nicely. Hey Siri, tell Jarvis play Endgame.
Your message to Jarvis says play Endgame. Ready to send it?
Send. Send.
Okay, it's sent.
Did your screen change? And is it autoplay?
Years ago,
Pretty cool, huh?
I fought my way out of that cave.
You can see it playing the movie over here. That's the power of SignalR. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of the meeting. I hope that you no, but it's cool. I mean, that's one of the cool integrations that you can do with SignalR. I will go through the demo a little bit later, kind of show you the amount of code. And by the way, that demo is inside that repo. So if you want to play around with it, the only thing that's not there is the component that allows me to go from my iPhone to the web application, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So perfect, sweet. So let's talk about SignalR. Now, I do have, as I was joking before, the world's most expensive whiteboard right here, which is just an iPad. And I wanted to talk about SignalR, but I want to talk about it on a whiteboard because we're all developers, architects, whatever, right? And it's easier to talk on a whiteboard and kind of show how things work. So I wanted to do that. So let me see if I can get that going here. Let me share my content, which I'm not sure what's going to do to my other content. We'll find out here, Will. So yeah, so cancel. Oh, nope, it didn't do anything. That's a user error. My apologies. Okay, start broadcast. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Well, this was the other screen sharing. Oh, yes. Got it.
Hey.
It helps if I read what it actually is telling me it's going to do rather than just frantically clicking cancel because I did something wrong. So, all right, so there's a whiteboard. So how does this work? So let's not talk about the specifics of the text. Let's talk about what SignalR actually does. All right. So when I told you all to go to your to that URL, here's what happened. Is inside my application. Oh, helps if I have the right kind. This is my web app. So this is my app. All right. Inside my app, I essentially have a couple things. I have JavaScript, and I have, so this is for the front end, and then I have for the back end. So front end, back end. Behind the scene, I have some C# code, right? In particular, I have something called a hub. And this hub is the thing that makes SignalR run. Right? It is a thing that handles all the different types of connections that it might be available for a client. So I could have JavaScript, right? And so essentially what we're doing is by going to that page, that JavaScript is initiating a connection to that hub. And when that happens, that hub, they're actually, and this is not necessarily, this is just me writing a note, they're negotiating, I can't type, negotiate what sort of protocol or a way they're going to communicate between the two. So for example, if your server infrastructure supports WebSockets, it will say, hey, I can speak WebSockets. Great, JavaScript does the WebSockets. If it says, hey, I'm just a lonely server, I'm a 2008 R2 servers because they're still there, and people still use them. I'm going to be doing, I can't do anything. And the JavaScript client says, oh, I'm going to do long polling. So it automatically tries to say, okay, yep, WebSockets, WS, or long polling. and you can actually add your own custom types of negotiation for your connections, right? That connection that you have here will have a GUID. That GUID represents that unique connection, right? So if I log in on my phone and I'm on my desktop, guess what? I got 2 different GUIDs. There's no way to bring them together. Or is there? I actually have a demo that kind of shows you that a little bit later. So there's a way to actually aggregate those connections to individual users as well. But anyway, that's essentially at a high level kind of how it works. Now, that the hubs are independent, are there to manage individual set of functionality. All right. So say, for example, I could have a notification hub. So let me take this. Let me erase some of this stuff so I can get a little more. 1 second. Come on, go away. All right. So I can have another hub over here and another hub. All right. So say this is a notify hub. All right. So this is the thing when you log in, it's like, hey, you have X amount of messages, or this happened, or whatever. And then you may have a chat hub. This chat hub is the one that I can actually pop in on a div or something else in my app and say, hey, I'm now chatting with Will, talking to him about whatever the things and it's handling. And then I may have some other app that essentially allows me to do, like, for example, I'll call it an event, like raise events and do those things. Your client actually establishes 3 distinct connections to every hub. Now, you may think about it, wait, it's just one client. It's just my web browser connecting to it. Yeah, you're connecting to 3 different hubs if that page has code to do so, right? If you say, hey, I need to connect to the Notify hub, I can connect into the chat hub, I'm connecting to the event hub. And event hub, just that's what I came up with. It could be whatever else hub, right? That is essentially how it works. And again, it negotiates the protocol behind them, and it's automatically, well, not automatically. Now in the new SDKs, it will automatically reconnect if you disconnect. But just like I have my front end here, which just in my web application, I can also have C#. So there are SDKs that I can actually use to be able to write a C# client for a WPF application, for a console app, for whatever I want to connect to the actual hubs behind the scenes. And again, I can cherry pick whichever one. If I just want to connect to the chat hub, I can easily do that. So any questions before I move from this to the demos? Going once, going twice. Sold. And by the way, if it comes up, if I say something, it comes up again, just feel free to interrupt. Now let me stop the sharing here. Stop, and let me reshare my content. All right, and there we share. Slight blips, but it works. So, all right, so let's go with the first, well, the most overused demo that you have out there, which essentially it's a chat client. Now, SignalR is more than a chat. That infrastructure for a chat client is meant to, again, real-time messaging or eventing, right? If any way you want to look at it. And messaging, I mean like an actual, like in a message, not necessarily like hello or what's up, like you would do in a chat. So if you go to, let me bring this up again. If we were to go to chat, that's SignalR.net, SignalR.app, sorry, you will see this chat here. It's like, hello, nice. This behind the scenes is literally just a basic demo, right? I log in, there's basic JavaScript, and actually I borrowed this, quote unquote, from the ASP.NET website for SignalR came out. So I was like, hey, I'm going to take it and I'm going to use this, and I'm going to essentially decompose it and show people kind of how it'll build. So if I look at this, and if I do this, we should be able to see Windows and Visual Studio. All right. So what we have here is 2 things. By default, we have a web project and we have a Windows project, and I can talk about them independently. Let's talk about the Windows project. First of all, SignalR 4.NET framework. So that's 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. Requires OWIN, right? OWIN, or Open Web Interface for .NET. right? So that means that if you have an application that doesn't a classic .NET application that doesn't have OWIN set up and that entire hosting pipeline, you're going to have to bootstrap that into it. Now, that's not there's a lot of NuGet packages. OWIN's been around for a while, so you can actually easily attach it. But I'm just kind of bringing it up that you're going to have that infrastructure in place, and that infrastructure in place is the startup class. If you're doing .NET Core, you've seen this before. The startup is essentially a household name now. This is where it actually originated from. But it's pretty straightforward. We add a app that maps SignalR. Now, by doing it this way, this gives you a bunch of default settings out of the box, and we'll explore those default settings and what you can do with them and what you can change it. I'm also referencing one package, actually a couple packages, Microsoft.ASP.NET. Let me zoom in. .SignalR, and this is for targeting .NET 4.5 because this application is a 4.5 app. So it works, right? It's .NET, it should work. Then you can add different items to it. So we have JavaScript, we have system web. This essentially, so it could be hosted on top of the ASP.NET runtime. You can use that. So these are all the NuGet packages that you have there. There's very minimal code. This essentially just says, I want to bootstrap SignalR, and here's my hub. That is a ridiculous amount of code for what actually does behind the scenes. So we have the hub. This is the base class that you will inherit from and use. And by default, just like we do with controllers, we're going to call it whatever hub, notification hub, event hub, message hub, blah hub, whatever hub. And that is just a common naming convention, right, that was established. And then anything that you have underneath of it, those are the events or the things that get exposed as messages for that hub, right? So if I try to say, hey, I need to connect to the chat hub, when I do that, I'm establishing a connection not to this method, but to the entire hub, right? And there actually are some methods in here. If I do override, on connected, on disconnected, on reconnected, that I can actually override because they're just virtual events and saying, hey, this client, a client was connected. Here's the GUID. Here's the unique identifier for that client connection, that connection ID. So that way, if I need to add or remove or set up something for you, I can easily do that when you establish that connection in your hub. So there we have that. Then we can create an event, whether it be send. And this one, like in this situation, it takes in two parameters, a string or a message. It could take a complex object. It could take a DTO or a POCO, right? A plain old CLR object that has 3 properties, 6 properties, whatever you want in it. Those are just the data that you're willing to send across the wire. Now, when it comes to SignalR and the messages, I typically, just like with RPC or DCOM or WCF or anything else, I like to lean on the old but tried. I'd rather be chatty than fatty. So what does that mean? There's like, I'd rather have a lot of messages that are very, very small rather than a gigantic message with all the data, right? And the reason why that is because I can easily decouple those messages and saying, hey, X happened, X prime happened, Y prime happened, rather than trying to send this gigantic bulk across the wire and then the code trying to figure out what really happened. Was it Y prime or was it X or X prime, right? This way you're slowly dicing it. Also, you can also vertical scale that way. So that way, if you know that you're going to have more of X prime than you'll ever have of X, then you could actually be its own hub and you can host that somewhere else if you wanted to, right? So that allows you to have that flexibility as you go along. Now, line number 9 is where we actually care about. This, like I said, the hub manages all the connections. So it knows specifically which users are connected to it. And it does it by using this property called clients, which behind the scenes is the iHub color connection context of dynamic. And you can see it there. So this is what I was saying. So this is a iHub color connection context and it's dynamic. Can anybody guess why it's dynamic? This is the interactive part of their presentation. Anyone?
Probably because it could be anything.
There you go.
Contacts.
Yep, because it could be really anything. So trying to standardize something, it's next to, well, trying to figure out, well, which I interface can we do? It's like, well, dynamic don't care, right? Dynamic says, hey, I'm just here to do whatever metadata that I have. In particular, the programming model is that if you ever done any coding with dynamic, actually creating your own dynamic objects. And what I mean by that is not necessarily just using the word dynamic, right? I mean, actually creating an object that inherits from dynamic object and doing all the properties and all those methods. You can actually inspect all that metadata. And then you can say, oh, someone's trying to call XYZ from this. Well, the ASP.NET team is actually, well, the .NET team now, funny because there's really, now it's all .NET, has taken that feature or that ability to do that and use dynamic to be able to query and say, oh, here's the type of message I've received, right? So then I can actually map that to a client call or something behind the scenes. So let me explain what I mean by that. If I were to do clients let me kind of zoom here. You can see we have caller, we have client, so that's an individual client or all the clients or an individual group or all of the groups. So it allows you to cherry pick information and that you can provide a runtime and saying, oh, by the way, I want everybody in the admin group, or I want all of the groups who that are essentially a connection who an unauthenticated user came into and say, I'm a member of group X and group Y, but not Q. So that's essentially where this comes into it. And we'll use not necessarily groups, but we'll use clients here in a bit in the next demo. You can do that. You can also say all except. So for everybody except this one. Individual colors, others in the group or others in group user or all, individual user or all of the users. You have the ability to kind of, again, sort of project on top of that client connection, all the client connections out there. So if I were to do all, you can see here that we have, again, the word dynamic for all, which is cool because it allows me to do this. And if I Control-Shift-B, it compiles. Pretty cool because it's dynamic. It doesn't care. So what I did here in line 9 now, I've gone through and I said, hey, SignalR, for clients, for all the clients, invoke the Hello Kitty message, method, which essentially I'm saying, hey, all of the clients have a send this message. The name of the method or the action called Hello Kitty, and I want you to pass in these parameters. So it takes in everything from the right of the period to say, here's what's going on. There's the metadata that you care about for all the connections that are connected here, whether it be mobile, whether it be a tablet, desktop, whatever. It's just that metadata that sits there. And the reason why I'm beating this to a pulp is because of this. If I actually were to look at the default CSS/HTML file, which is the web page that we all logged into and did the chat, down here, there's a bunch of JavaScript, actually a bunch of jQuery, because the SignalR client for this specific thing uses jQuery. All right. Behind the scenes, we're saying, hey, I want to connect. I need a reference to the hub, to the chat hub, right? That's that hub. So that's why the name is important. Okay. By the way, create a function that the hub can call and broadcast a message. Look at this, line 31, chat that client broadcast message. If I were to do this, maybe, where did my cursor go? Oh, there it is. My apologies. Look at that method on line number 9. Look at the name on line 31. That's why, because I'm actually sending that exact same text over to JavaScript and saying broadcast message. If I were to sometimes this is good or bad. If I were to make this uppercase, do you think that will work in the JavaScript world? Not in JavaScript world, but by me changing the case on this, do you think my JavaScript is still working? Nope, because the case is different. Because the client's going to look for, oh, I need to find something that's capital B broadcast message, even though you connected to something with lowercase b. So just a heads up on those sort of, I would say finicky, but it's just sort of conventional things, right? That you got to remember that whatever the casing that you have, specifically from JavaScript, that the case needs to match. Okay. Let me bring that back to look like case that. So I'll close the hub here. So this just says, hey, by the way, in my hub, there is a client object, and we also have a, excuse me, down here, a server object. So these are events. So the client is the events that I am receiving. The .server are the events I am emitting or sending, right, across the wire. So in here, this is just nothing but JavaScript. Hey, cool, do a prompt, blah, blah, blah. You saw it when you logged in. Give me your name so I know who you are. The big things here in line 47, I want you to start, and it's always synchronous. When that's done, I want to wire this, the click event for the button. By the way, I want to send this message whenever it gets sent. Give me the value that will display name of whatever that name was, and get me the message that they typed. And then clear it and rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And literally what that will do behind the scenes, it will send the message out to here, and it will just literally echo it back to everybody. Say, all right, this goes back to whatever the clients care about it. And then it will essentially trigger this broadcast message to say, cool, I got my name, and I got, you know, the name from Javier, and here's the message, hello world. I close that there. And here's what the message I get there, and I'm just going to use plain old jQuery to append, right? And one of the things you'll see here is that scripts jQuery, line 23, which I kind of glanced over so I can kind of back into it. There's a SignalR/hubs. So one of the things I said was, like, when you select in line 11 and you say map.SignalR, you're essentially opting into the default values. One of the default values is like, hey, what is the path for the generation of all the proxy code for my clients? Well, that is essentially says, excuse me, I clicked on the wrong thing, is SignalR Hubs. So what do I mean by that? If I were to come over here, and good, there's no bad words in here. I'm kidding, there never is. If I click on view source, and I try to zoom in, you will see SignalR Hubs. If you click on this, you will see this, SignalR JavaScript library. Reference this. Here's where they're actually going through and defining every single piece that makes JavaScript, that makes the JavaScript query, the client work. Here's a hub, there's clients. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Here are the properties, create proxies. So when I said that chat hub, essentially just behind the scenes using an array for all the different proxies that you can actually have. That's the name of the hub. I'm create a proxy for it. Great. What's my client object? I don't know. Create an empty object, but it's a valid object. Valid JavaScript object, right? That I can actually append methods to it. I can do, you know, server that foo equals function alert, and it will always work because it's JavaScript. I'm just dynamically appending data to it. And then here proxy that server says, oh, by the way, server does have a method definition. Well, it has an object called send, which essentially is a function, which behind the scenes it says, hey, go to the proxy, go for the proxy for the chat hub, invoke it, and apply this data. Merge the case method for the uppercase send, and take all the arguments and send them as an array and send them across the wire. Oh, and by the way, when you do a connection, a hub, go to /SignalR. Again, those are the default values that you can override in the map SignalR. So this is kind of how all the would say the sausage is made, or everything kind of gets put together. The cool part about it is that this thing right here, if you actually go look at the old SignalR, and when I mean old SignalR, probably it's the wrong way of calling it, the SignalR for .NET framework rather than SignalR Core for ASP.NET Core. This is nothing more than a text file. So literally what they're doing is they're actually injecting text right in here. Or they're like, oh, let me just use reflection and let me just append the same type of lines and just spit, and it just gets generated. So the cool part about this too is that because it's a valid JavaScript file, and I don't care about dynamically creating this on every single time, you can actually save this and then include it as a JS file that you can deploy on the CDN or whatever. It does not care. It's like a honey badger. It just does it, right? So it's cool that way, that at least you can scale it that way and take advantage of it. And obviously it's clever enough. And the best part is code you don't have to write, right? Because you already have enough code to write for other stuff that it just makes it a little bit simpler, right? For you. So cool. Any questions? No? Cool.
Not
All
seeing
right.
any in the chats or anything either.
No worries.
We're keeping an eye out.
Sweet. All good. No, that's great. All right. So we were discussing about this before we let everybody in. So, Will, I'm sure you know that one of the hardest problems about running a user group is how you're going to give away prizes, because your sponsors give you cool swag and you got to get rid of it, because like my wife said, no more storing in our basement. You need to get rid of all that junk. So if we go here, we go to giveaway, back to that, giveaway, that SignalR, that app. By the way, I was really surprised that domain was open when I bought it. I was like, wow, I would have thought somebody had it, but I'm going to sell it back to Microsoft for at least $1 billion. Or free Azure for life, one of the two. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, if we go to giveaway, so let me do this. Let me just do Control Shift and I'm doing this in incognito or in private mode because I'm using Edge on the Mac, and I will call it Javier at lozanotech.com, and I hit register. By the way, thank you for giving me your email now. You will not getting spam, or are you going to get spam? You never know. You never know. No, I'm kidding. You'll not get spam. The email is actually kept in memory in a essentially a dictionary. And then whenever I reboot the app, it just goes away. So yeah, so giving away prizes. So everybody who logged in or tried to log in, I'm going to be using my phone yet again to go and figure out who our winner is. And this is pretty straightforward because what it does, I just go through and I look for whoever's registered. We're going to loop through them and just randomly pick a user. And we're going to let that person know that they're a winner and everybody else that they lost. So I'm going to pick a winner here. So I won. Did everybody register or type in their email address on the webpage? And you were told you were a loser. Not a real loser, but
I'm such a loser.
Right? And this was completely random, right? It's not like I rigged this for myself. But the cool part about it, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, is that I actually do have a little app, of course, and it blurs it because yay, filters. So if you were to go to, let me open it up. Let me do this so you can see it. Cleverly called pick, pick a winner. The password is still ultra secure. It is 1, 2, come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pick a winner. We have a different winner. I'm winning a bunch of losers. But again, I'm just showing you that it's completely random, right? It just randomly happened that way. So it's cool because this thing uses several things. It uses forms authentication. So I had to actually authenticate So if I were to come over here and do Control Shift I, sorry, Command Shift I, not Control Shift I, because I'm in a Mac. Come on. Oh, not doing it. Oh, it's doing it on the other thing. My apologies. Let's do it this way. More tools, developer tools. Look at application, actually cookies. There is actually a cookie that gets created. It's a form sort cookie. So we all love form sort because that's the only auth we have, right? But let me show you why that's cool. If I bring up I close this bad boy here, and I bring up the giveaway app. Again, it looks similar to my startup. The only difference, my other startup, the only difference is that I have is line 14. There's this this global host, which, believe it or not, it's a God object. A global host that dependency resolver that register this object. Believe it or not, this was actually the precursor, not necessarily in code, but in concept for service collection in .NET Core for the DI. So because SignalR was the first thing that actually had its own dependency resolver, actually its own DI container that it could actually use for. It is not as clean as the interface that you have with service collection and extension methods, but it works, right? You can actually create your own dependency resolver and say, hey, I want you to use Ninject, I want you to use Autofact, I want you to use Unity or whatever, and I can actually plug it in. For this one, I just used the one out of the box because it's a demo. So I'm saying, hey, for anybody that cares about the user ID provider, I want you to use the principal user ID provider class, which just rolls off the tongue. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when we authenticate, or when we create a cookie, and we're actually behind the scenes creating a class that, well, an instance, not we, but the runtime is a class that implements iPrincipal, right? So we've all written code where we say user.isn'trole, user.identity.name. Well, that user object, that property, it is of iPrincipal. And that is the thing that governs everything in .NET. In the olden days, there were multiple classes. Now there's one to rule them all, claims principal. And that way you can attach claims, you can attach multiple identities and so forth. But that is the thing that allows you to say, hey, user.isn't-role. Are you an administrator? Are you an editor or whatever, right? And it will check your quote unquote roles that you got. How you got those roles? It could have been by using an external identity provider, an IDP, by using ASP.NET identity, whatever thing you have configured on your application, it creates that object for you and it populates it. So the reason why I kind of went on a rant about that is because in this demo, I am using our dear old friend Forms Authentication. So line 21, well, actually, first of all, I'm saying line 17 to 19, I'm saying deny all unauthenticated users. None shall pass. You need to, I only care about authenticated users, right? So deny all anonymous users. What it says is here, okay, my mode is forms, my default URL, which I'm going to redirect you to, is /home, right? My login URL is register. The name of my cookie is .giveaway, like we saw when I was showing you the app, the developer tools. Use cookies, and it's a sliding expiration. So we're going to just add on whatever 30 minutes, the default values, every time you refresh or do something. You cannot delete a cookie and you cannot log out. Sorry, it's a demo, so I figured we can add that later, or send a PR and I'll add it. It's literally that simple. So if I go look at the register controller, the register controller has literally one method on it. Well, actually two. Register because ASP.NET, well, MVC, render the page. Here's the post. Give me your email. Set the auth cookie, and don't make it. And essentially what it says do not create a persistent cookie. Make it a session cookie. That's it. At that point is I literally wash my hands of all authentication pipeline because it just works. It has worked like that since 2002 and creates the cookie. The pipeline is there. And then I'm saying, okay, now go home and render the main page. And as I was saying earlier, we all have code that says user.identity.name. And look, welcome user.identity.name being your email, what you typed in. Right? It could be something else, right? It doesn't matter. If you're selected as a winner, this and that. And then down here, line 11, on down, I just, on the script section, similar to that, hey, there's that SignalR min. There's the default configuration, SignalR/hubs, which we saw in the other demo. It's just using different hubs now. There's a notify hub, so give me notify connection. For client, notify winner. Here's the name, here's the outcome, winner, loser, whatever that is. I'm just appending HTML, right? I don't care, and then start it. Super simple JavaScript, nothing fancy. It's just sort of there to kind of show, it's more server-side show than it is client-side show. Okay. So let's go look at the hub. This hub is a little more involved, okay? Because I'm overriding the on connected, on reconnected, and on disconnected to try to be fair, right? So what does that mean? Is unconnected, I get that user and I add it to the user registry, which again is that dictionary / data table behind the scenes. On reconnected is the same thing. I try to add it. On disconnected, I try to remove that user. So just kind of check in, check out, check in, check out every single time. Now, what I did is that user, I just created extension methods for that, rather than creating them and making my hub ugly and bigger, right? So in here, I just say, okay, hub, get user. If it's get me the context, or if the context is not, say we're going to get a user, give me a connection ID. Now, this connection ID here is a string. Oh, that was horrible. Come on, go there. Come on. You can't see it again. I'm done. That's a string. Believe me, it says string. So that's where I get that GUID for that connection. So great, give me the user ID, get me that and context that user. That is where that principle comes from. It's built in .NET, has been there since .NET 1.0. Let's use that. Get me the identity, get me the name. Cool. Now I have this, SignalR user that I can throw into my registry. So keep throwing it, keep throwing it, keep throwing it. All right. The user registry, which is under models, it is very cool. It's a dictionary. It is not thread safe, so my apologies. We're talking about threading and async and stuff like that. It is not. So we add the user, just set it, and then remove it, we remove it. And then we say, hey, get a random user from here. Great, give me all the keys being the user ID, so my email or whatever I typed into the text box. From there, give me a random.next and give me that key and return that user that's there. Literally, it's just randomly picking. And this random helper instance, I will not take credit for this. I did what every good developer does. I copy and paste it from Stack Overflow. No, I'm kidding. Do not copy and paste directly from Stack Overflow. I did this one because it was John Skeet. So I figured, I know John, I know he knows what he's talking about. So it's safe if I actually copy and paste this code. So it's just a very, very great random helper that is super random because it's actually, and also thread safe because it's interlocked. So it's kind of nice. So anyway, I don't care. It's a random picker. It works. But the big thing about it is this other thing is that I have the, sorry, not the register controller. I have the pick controller. The pick controller was the thing I was doing on my phone, right? I was using this to pick the winner as I did on that URL. Well, what we do here, the password just checks it, validates it, validates the password. And by validating it is it checks whatever in the config file. So it's like literally that simple. So if it's there, then I want to create a new price picker object, and I want to draw a price. In other words, pick the winner and tell me who the winner is. That's it. You notice that nowhere here do I have any calls to clients whatever, like I did on the chat one. Well, the cool part about this with SignalR is that not all that code doesn't have to live inside just the hubs. It can live anywhere inside that application. So how does it do that? Let's go look at what draw price does. So we have the price picker application, the price picker class. What it does, there's two constructors for it, and we'll kind of work it backwards. The default one, and one that takes an I connection context of dynamic, thus the dynamic word again, clients. So it says, this is where your clients come from. Well, the default constructor, which I'm creating over here on the price picker, does this. It says get hub clients. Well, get hub clients says, oh yeah, that God object, connection manager. So the thing that manages all the connections for all the hubs, give me the context for the notify hub. So give me all the metadata for that notify hub, which by the way, it's all living in memory, right? It's all living in there for that instance of the application. So for that hub context, I want to get all the clients. And again, hub context, connection context from everything that's there. All the connections for that SignalR Hub. And once I have that, then I can use my similar type of code and draw price. I'm saying, give me a random user, which we know how to get it. Use random number, blah, blah, blah. Get me that user ID. That user ID is the value that gets stored in the cookie. It is the user, that identity, that name value. Okay. So that says, great. I now have that user. All except that user. Well, how does it know what all the clients are all? Except for that one. Remember this line of code in our startup? This principal user ID provider? That's how it knows. It knows that, oh, my user ID is actually the principal name. Got it. Behind the scenes, it checks the actual user principal that it's connected to. And we have one because we created an authentication session using FormSoft. So from there, we say, everybody except that user, you're a loser. You lost. That specific user, you're the winner. And the cool part about this is that I'm not using, not creating a different method. I'm just saying notify winner. This is the thing that allows me to pick one or other. Remember, I was showing you groups or group or all groups except for this one. This is how you can use that information to cherry pick those groups. They're all associated to that specific user. Pretty cool, huh? How are we on time, Will? Because I can talk to a post.
We've got about 3 minutes.
3 minutes, cool. So let me show you the Jarvis demo quick, because I have that time, right? So the Jarvis demo is this. Let me close that. Jarvis. Let me close all of this. So was very heavy, did a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes. Let me show you all the code that is inside that hub. Let me zoom in a little more for you. Do you see all the code for that hub? It's nothing.
So much code.
So much code. Because I don't care about the hub. I care about the connections of the hub. So what do I mean by that? And I created another controller. This is the old school as in like web API. So there's an API controller. So let me zoom out a little bit. Similar as we did with the price picker. This one I just did in the controller. Give me the hub clients, right? We know this, all the clients for the notify hub. There's a post. method. And I did it this way because people, they don't want to put attributes to confuse people from it. You can actually see where I'm getting this data from Twilio. So whenever I say, when I was using Siri and I said, tell Jarvis, I was literally just, I have a contact on my contacts phone called Jarvis that has a phone number that I purchased from Twilio. In Twilio, I have a Twiml app, which essentially says any message it gets, it's going to take that entire content of that message and do an HTTP post to an endpoint that I configure. That endpoint is this controller. It receives it. It's some of the data that it gets behind the scenes is this API version from country to city, SSID, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I only care about that, the body. I go and I say, hey, you can turn the word play. Oh, you do? Sweet. Then it's an actual command that I know what to do with. Get the body, get me the actual value of it. So when I said end game and went through and parsed that code and said, cool, give me that video key. Well, that video key is in the config file. And here I had Avengers, Iron Man, Thor. So literally is I'm parsing that text message, getting rid of the word play and get me whatever that thing is. That thing is tied to a YouTube video ID. I grab that video ID from the config file. Then I just say, cool, if that's the case, then there's actually better code to do it that way. Guess what? I want you to send down a complex object of the title of the movie and the video key. Client said all that, deliver message, just send it down the pipe. Because now we know what we're doing or what we're trying to invoke. The views, bunch of just CSS that sits there. We've seen this similar JavaScript code before, connection.notify hub. This one actually has login. So if you were to look at the console, you can see all the login that's doing behind the scenes, all the negotiation and everything else. If you're disconnected, wait some time and reconnect again. Deliver message from video, set the player. And I did it here just because I didn't want to make this a lot bigger. But the code in here, set video player. I want you to log the video.title. So this is a complex object. I'm sending a JSON object across the wire. And there's the key. Set the title to be that. Oh, and by the way, I want you to play that video. There's the embed. There's the YouTube URL. Autoplay it. And this YouTube here is nothing more than an iframe that gets set. Set the URL to that. So it defaults to this one. So using JavaScript, I am dynamically changing that with whatever I get via SignalR. Pretty cool, huh? It's so cool that I did this. This is actually funny enough. I did it the weekend before we launched the big project that we all worked on, Will. We were doing those nightly testing. Remember all those fun nights? Checking that everything, checking all the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed. So I worked on this because I kept getting interrupted by my kids. Not in a bad way. It's just like, I'm in a call, frantically muting things. I created something called room status, which actually uses Azure SignalR service. So this is Azure SignalR in the cloud, which can scale horizontally forever, right? So I have an iPad that goes to a URL and says, here's the status, busy with calls, text me if you need anything. By the way, I'm busy for the next 2 hours and 59 minutes and 17 seconds. So it actually starts the timer. This is what the web interface looks like. And I have it on my phone, right? Or on a web page, it's like, I'm on a call, default message. It's a 60-minute timer. So if I were to hit that, it would say, I'm on a call, start 60 minutes. So you can see it clocking down. Or I'm in a video call, or busy with calls, custom message, send it.
Javier, where do we send our money? What's your PayPal email?
I know.
So I have it. I haven't open sourced it yet. It's private because I need just to clean up some stuff on it. But literally I just need to find a free weekend to change the 6 lines of code. But the cool part about it is that with this, it's not the gateway to hell. It's literally outside of my office door. Okay. And I don't think I have any here. Let's see if I can find it back here. No, I didn't. I bought several of them, but obviously I placed them somewhere so good that I can't find them. The one thing you cannot see is down here on the bottom right-hand side where this thing plugs in. Wemo, W-E-M-O, sells different IoT devices. One of them is that plugs and everything else. So I have a plug. It's the Slim Plug, Wemo Slim Plug, or sorry, Smart Plug. Anyway, that thing is Wi-Fi enabled. It is also responsive to an SDK. There is a NuGet package that actually wraps around that SDK. So I actually can programmatically turn on the thing off and on by knowing the IP address of the device, which is easy to find out because I have the app. So then my goal is to take my Stream Deck. Actually, you just saw my other lights turn on. The Stream Deck that people see with like doing their stream online, to literally just have a button I can just push it. It's like red light off, red light on. Even though I could just say, use Alexa to do it, but it's more fun to build it yourself with a button. So pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
So yeah, that's Signal real-time features to your application with SignalR.
Very cool. Thanks, Javier. I think this, you know, for those of you that know how to do the cool little hand clappy thing, this would be a good time for that. Yeah, that was fantastic. Very, very good. Let's see. I am going to go. So first off, thank you very much for presenting. And then I'm going to go back to my slide deck here and go through a couple things really quick. So first off, really fast thank you to the sponsors of slc.net. These are the folks who make sure that, you know, we get prizes and that there are people who are responsible and helping to run these meetings and things. That's Health Equity, Tech Systems, JetBrains, DealerTrack, O'Reilly. Yeah, so you can see some of those are local companies and some of them are folks who are, and I think we missed one or two as well, but anyway, we need to update this slide. So let's go on really quick to the next one. So on this slide, you will see an opportunity to win some of the much talked about prizes. In order to do that, we require you to provide some feedback for our presenter tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, go to this URL and let's see if I can pop it into the chat if nobody has already done that. There we go. And if everybody would be so kind as to enter in some presenter ratings, comments, and of course your name so that we know who to give a prize to, and we'll give a few minutes for those to filter in. While that's happening, I'm going to keep talking because that's what I'm going to do. And just a couple of things. We do have a Slack channel that folks can get to. Looks like the link is hidden behind this here. Let me just move that. There we go. That you can get to. You can also very easily get to any of these things that I'm going to talk about here on our website, slcnet.tech. It's a really easy website to get to. So you can go there. There's links to all this kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about it for just a second. Oh, and gosh, it looks like we even have a, wow, look at that, a QR code. So I think that probably will get you to the prize entry as well. Anyway, so the Slack team is there. You can, you know, post or look for job opportunities, discuss .NET things. It's a Utah specific Slack channel for all folks across the state, right? So anybody who wants to join can. Of course, we wouldn't kick anybody out if they weren't from the state, but yeah, that is there, and it goes, I think it goes through seasons where it's very active and sometimes it's not as active, and yeah, but it's good. And then the next thing on this list is presentation proposals. So we are open for presentation proposals. We have the next few months lined up. We're still searching for folks that we want to have present in the last maybe 5 or 6 months of the year. And so we are happy to take those proposals. Anything that you think would be interesting or valuable to people who code in .NET. And in this case, it's not limited to 5 minutes. As you can see, it's more like an hour, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? And so you can join those, or sorry, not join those. Wow, now I'm really rambling. I did it. You made me ramble like I wasn't doing it before. Okay. So yeah, if you enter that form, then we can consider you for a presentation. Doesn't hurt to do a lightning talk first, right? Then we can see you and all that kind of stuff. But always good to get those proposals. How are we? Is someone monitoring prizes? I think that's Gary. Are you looking at our entries? How are we looking?
I am, and we do have some entries coming in. I did want to say there was a question on the chat. Ooh. So as we let a couple of people come in for
finish up that.
One of the there was a question about are there any issues with load balancers, and that came from Kate. So maybe if you have any more detail to that question, you can unmute and add to that. But if our presenter can address that, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking my question. Actually, can you hear me well?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Okay. So we're actually implementing right now SignalR at my work, and I didn't really see the code yet. Somebody else did a POC, but this is why I'm here. And I just overheard in one of the conversation that something about load balancers, and I was just wondering if it's an issue and should we worry about it or not.
That's a great question. Load balancers are going to be your nightmare. And I say that depending on how you go about addressing it. And actually, load balancers are a nightmare regardless whether you use SignalR or not, just web applications, right? If you try to have state or anything else. Because a true load balancer is you're able to have, hey, I have a farm of 10 inches of my application. I'm just going to round robin. I'm going to pick whichever, right? So you care behind the scenes to be able to sync those messages, right? So my first question, though, back to you is this .NET Core or .NET Framework?
Framework.
Oh, .NET Framework.
Yeah.
.NET Framework. Okay, cool. So the reason why I asked that is because there's two ways to the answer varies depending on which you're doing it. If you were in .NET Core, your problem is a lot easier. The answer is use Azure, in particular Azure SignalR Service. If you're not doing that, then you kind of have to write some custom code, minimal custom code, and still use Azure. And the reason why I say still use Azure, because one of the things I didn't talk about, and actually I do have a demo of it, where out of the box, there's a lot of features that SignalR has. But one of the things that allows you to do is allows you to essentially inject a backplane. What does that mean? It means that, for example, I have that chat hub. Say I have two instances of it. I have server 1 and server 2. I essentially have two chat hubs in it. Server 1 has 6 clients. Server 2 has 3 clients. They're not talking to each other because out of the box, they're just whichever connections you have in there. And the load balancers does not care. It does round robin, right? So you can actually add this backplane to it, which essentially behind the scenes, when you configure your applications, you can say, hey, I want to configure SignalR so there's a backplane, there's a channel behind, so whatever instances that are running this application can talk to each other. And there's several flavors that you can use. There's a SQL Server backplane that you can use. Essentially, use SQL as a table, which it has been discontinued, and Microsoft tells you not to use it, but that doesn't prevent people from using it. Essentially, several tables behind the scenes. I can do it because the other two options are unfeasible for people to use. One of them is to use Azure service bus or an on-prem service bus instance where you can actually create a queues out on that service bus, and those messages essentially that message will get published behind the scenes, and it will sync between each individual instance. The third one, which is by far the best one for .NET framework, it is Redis. It's all in memory. It's cache, right? We send those values in there and they get automatically synced. So you can pick those out of those three poisons, the one that's best for you. The ones that I've had a lot of success using behind the scenes, and we scaled it up to, I don't know how many, I think it was like 8,000 concurrent clients who were messing with it, is the SignalR one. I'm sorry, the service bus one, just because it's so lightweight, and you can just easily set it up. You can also test it locally too, because you have that connection string. You can say, hey, it all works the way it does. But again, regardless of this, a load balancer will always be your pain, regardless of what you're doing. But with this one, with the backplane, you can have the different instance of the application. And the nice thing about it is, say you bring up instance 3, just as long as it's configured, as soon as your app spins up, it will actually register with the service bus and say, oh, now here's my third instance. It will automatically do it for you. So it's very nice that way. It's not like you don't have to write a lot of extra stuff.
Interesting. Few things to think about. One thing I wanted to just double check on.
Yeah.
The Redis piece, how does that play together? Because we do use Redis Elastic Cache from AWS. Is that played together with that, or something, or is it something completely different?
So that's a great question. So it all plays together depending on which NuGet package you install. So like the service bus is just a NuGet package that you install and say, hey, here's the service one. The backplane I want to use is this one. Mm-hmm. Just like you install the SQL Server one, and then when you install the Redis one. So essentially, gotcha. In this instance, you install the Redis one and say, hey, I need to use Redis. Got it. You could figure it in your app and you're done.
And also with SignalR, that might be a dumb question, but I just want to get it out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
There's no client-side polling of any kind, right? You just register, and the hub knows that your client registered. There's no like polling going on up to the server.
Well, there is, depending on the server that you're running in. If you're running on SQL Server 2008 R2 and below, then you're going to poll. If you're Windows Server 2012 and above, you're going to be WebSocket. And the reason why I say that is because even though you shouldn't be using SQL Server, Windows Server 2008 R2, but sometimes people are, because it's no longer supported and security issues and so forth, that would happen.
Could you repeat the versions one more time, just so I have written down?
Well, if you're using Windows Server 2012 and above, you'll be fine. You will not pull. You will have WebSockets.
Okay.
Is it possible, Javier, that if someone's using an old or deprecated version of a browser, a non-evergreen browser,
yes,
they might also get that degradation, that graceful degradation to polling?
Correct. Yep. And that's the other part of it, is that if you have an old browser, if you have Netscape Navigator, I'm just going to or something like old, it will do polling because it doesn't know how to top WebSockets. And the reason why I was very specific in those Windows versions is because WebSockets is an operating system thing. It's not a web server thing. So it wasn't added into Windows into 2012.
Okay, and we're talking about the server side, right?
Not the server side, the client side. Yeah, the client side you can use if you're using Chrome for most of your clients, or I'm sure or Edge, or heck, even
we just discontinued
any evergreen browser.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. Yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, then you will not have the long polling. You will have WebSockets.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much for answering.
Yeah, no problem. Sure thing.
Appreciate it.
Great questions. I think now that we've answered questions, and I think we're almost ready to do the prize part, this will be a good time so we don't go ahead and end the YouTube stream. So I'm going to stop the live stream. Thanks everybody if you were watching the video. Don't forget to click subscribe, all that, YouTuber stuff I'm supposed to say.